Hello and welcome to Third-Party Risk Management, Preventing the Next Stuxnet. If you're joining us live, our speaker is in the Slido discussion answering your questions right now. For audio or video issues, please click the technical support button below. I'd now like to turn it over to Rafael Garcia for the presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Rafael Garcia and today I'll be presenting on third-party risk management, preventing the next Stuxnet. I've been in the information technology area for the last 20 years with the last 7 years focused in information security. So one of my duties at the company I work for is third-party risk management, something that we have taken very seriously, and we developed this program that I'll be talking to you about. So cyber risk. What is cyber risk? How do you define cyber risk? We usually always try to minimize risk, right, in all of our daily activities. We don't want bad things happening to our environments. For instance, you know that if you drive a car too fast, or you are risking your life and possibly somebody else's life, or you might be risking being stopped by a police officer and getting a speeding ticket. You minimize that risk by driving at the allowed speed with a car that's in good condition and being aware of your surroundings. So by definition, risk is the exposure to the possibility of loss, injury, or other adverse or unwelcome circumstances. So risk is uncertainty times exposure. In the digital world, as many systems are connected to the internet nowadays and our data resides in storage media, either internal or external, there are many risks, and we have to have a duty to protect the information and information systems. There are different elements in cyber risk. There's usually the people who access the data continuously. There are processes in place across to access data or data systems, the infrastructure behind those systems, and external events who can vary from system malfunction to actors or cyber actors trying to access restricted data. All organizations are candidates for cyber attacks. It doesn't matter how big or small the business is. The malicious actors have different objectives. A lot of times it's financial benefit, but there's other reasons behind the attacks. Black swan events. A black swan is an unpredictable event that's beyond what's normally expected of a situation and has potentially severe consequences. Black swan events are characterized by their extreme rarity and their severe impact. A lot of times we believe nothing is going to happen, we're fine, we might not be a business that's on the ice or under target for attack. We are wrong. Some of the experts think that most of the businesses are at risk nowadays. All right, so the financial services. As you can see, in the last few years, cyber risk is being split into different categories, such as data security and data compromise, IT disruption, privacy, cyber theft, and cyber fraud. Back in 2016, it was just cyber risk, general idea of risk in the information systems. But then throughout the last years, it's been split into these different categories, and as the financial sector has been under attack multiple times. Now, in the healthcare industry, the healthcare industry is plagued by cybersecurity-related issues. These issues range from malware that compromises the integrity of systems and privacy of patients to distributed denial of service attacks, DDoS attacks, that disrupt facilities' ability to provide patient care. Today, IoT devices are a major risk, as hackers can access medical devices such as life support systems, respirators, heart pacemakers. So as these devices are connected to the internet or to networks, those are doors that can be opened by attackers where they can compromise the systems. Now, I work in the energy sector. So as for the energy sector, in the recent years, the energy sector has come to embrace cloud-based or interconnected management and distributed system. According to a new report published by Deloitte, cybersecurity threats put these critical resources at risk. Just like in other industries, IoT devices are now populating the electric grid, and they pose a big risk. Also, the Deloitte study finds that cyber attacks on utilities have been steadily increasing. In 2016 alone, there were 59 cyber attacks on the American energy sector. One of the best examples of an attack to the power grid is what happened in Ukraine with the Black Energy attack in December 2015. Some people believe it was the neighbor who attacked them. And that can happen as easily as implanting malware in their systems. So let me go over the cybersecurity events in the last 2 decades. All right. In cyberspace, a few lines of malicious code can be written by coders, script kiddies, or state actors, like in the case of Stuxnet. But what is the reason behind the attacks with malicious code? Most of the time, it is economic benefit, like I said before, or the actors, they want to get paid when information is compromised. We see cases of ransomware all the time, the stolen databases with customers' information such as credit cards, social security numbers, and more. Then there is the group of hacktivists whose primary objective is to disrupt the systems of an organization as a way to protest against things. And finally, we see the nation-sponsored attacks when the cyber armies and intelligence services of a country seek to show their power, as it was done in wars, or it's been done in wars. Today, an entire country's power grid can be compromised when sophisticated malware is implanted in critical infrastructure networks, same as attacks to the financial sector that can disrupt the economy of a country. So usually the sophisticated attackers target vulnerable network systems that have been previously scanned and penetrated by these cyber actors. Then they also target the humans behind a computer. We have 2 different groups here. The careless users, people who will open any email or click on attachments and links without taking care of or really reading into stuff. And then we have malicious insiders, people who's probably not pleased in their jobs and they want to, in a way, get back to their employers. So these attackers target them because, I mean, the humans are the ones who can open the doors of these systems, right? And then the last group that we'll be covering today is the vendors who interconnect their systems to your network for easier procurement, forecasting, and management. All right, so some of the major cyber attacks since 2010. In 2010, we heard about the Stuxnet virus attacks that led to the destruction of more than 1,000 Iranian centrifuges and delayed Iran's enrichment program. It's believed that it was done by the work between the U.S. and Israel, with some other countries helping. Some analysts, in retaliation to that, Iran got back to the U.S. by sending these denial of service attacks to the financial institutions in 2012 and 2013. And then also in 2012, it's believed that Iran launched these attacks to the Saudi company Aramco, destroying about 30,000 systems. Another big example here in the last decade is North Korea. It's believed that North Korea has increasingly mounted cyber attacks against its neighbor, South Korea. Most of these attacks are easy to attribute for three reasons. First, they often come from addresses known to be used by North Korea. They often occur on Korean anniversaries, and they often use similar methods and attack code. Experts believe that North Korea launches cyber attacks to steal South Korea's war plans. And they also believe that North Korea has used the cyberspace to launch increasingly sophisticated attacks to steal funds from financial institutions and cryptocurrency exchanges to generate income. So, Stuxnet. What happened with Stuxnet? Stuxnet was a malware code running in computers that controlled the industrial systems at this nuclear plant in Iran. In January 2010, it was discovered that these centrifuges were experiencing some explosions, and these are the systems used to enrich uranium. This was the second time it happened because back in 2009, they experienced the same issues. So in June 2010, a group of researchers at Belarus found malware code running in computers that control the industrial systems at the plant. So it was discovered that earlier version of this malware was already running since 2009. It was running on PLCs, which are programmable logic controllers. These are like small computers that are physically attached to industrial control systems. In this case of Stuxnet, these PLCs were manufactured by this German company Siemens. It was the Siemens S7 4000 model PLC that had this malware running on it. And what it did is it changed the speeds on the centrifuges to make them explode. So how did they do it? The cyber actors first obtained information from different sources to identify this specific model of PLCs. Then once they had the information in hand, they started developing the malware. Once the malware was created, the attackers spent some time in the delivery phase. This is where third-party risk management is important. What happened here is that they investigated who the suppliers, contractors were, and found a way to deliver this malware through one of the third-party vendors. It was delivered via USB. It was put on a USB drive, and it copied to the system, right? Once it was running there, it was very, very easy for the malware to start identifying everything on that network. It was, I would say, some of back then use of machine learning, because it was learning the processes of these centrifuges, and then it analyzed like the times, the speeds, and that when they ran and all the information that once it was collected, the malware used the information to start running and making the changes necessary to make them change. So it was blowing up these centrifuges and leaving no trace. So it was very hard for the nuclear plant engineers to understand what was happening. So major weakness was the lack of security control for contractors and third-party vendors. The attacker knew, they knew who to infect first with the help of infiltrated people who obtained digital certificates, and then they delivered this malware on the USB drives. The USB drives were not sanitized or scanned before they plugged them into the industrial control network. So in most cases, industrial control systems are not built with security in mind, and they have many, many vulnerabilities, starting with weak authentication mechanisms. So that's why it's very important that you run a third-party risk management program in your company if you have this kind of either industrial control systems or SCADA systems or your health network or financial system, right? So moving on, managing risk. The cybersecurity capability model. We can manage risk by reducing uncertainty or an exposure. So if we mitigate risk by reducing this exposure of vulnerabilities or exposure to opening doors to these actors, we can mitigate the risk and will be in better shape. So the energy sector a few years ago developed the Cyber Capability Maturity Model. It's a program that's a public-private partnership effort that was established as a result of the administration's efforts to improve electricity subsector cybersecurity capabilities and to understand the cybersecurity posture of the grid. It was developed at Carnegie Mellon University, and something very important to mention here is that it focuses on the implementation of cybersecurity practices associated with information technology and operation technology. For the last few years, they've been seen as separate worlds, very, very different worlds, right? The thing is that as systems are getting interconnected nowadays, the combination of these technologies and interaction of these different technologies is happening. So it's very important that all the same mitigation you apply on your IT world has to be applied on the OT world. The cybersecurity capability model considers 10 different domains. And these domains include risk management, asset change and configuration management, identity and access management, threat and vulnerability management, situational awareness, information sharing and communications, event and incidents response, the supply chain and external dependencies, the workforce management, and cybersecurity program management. So third-party risk management. That's, we have a cycle here. Our third-party risk management is a process in place at many companies that deals with the planning, due diligence, the contract negotiation, transition execution, continuous monitoring, termination of these third parties, and it goes back to planning and so on, right? So it's a continuous cycle that has to be reviewed all the time. And that's why it's very important you don't take your eyes off of it. Building digital relationship with third parties increases exposure to the cybersecurity world. So by following the right path, IT leaders can feel confident in their approach to managing the cyber risk of these new relationships. All right, so vendor relationships. It's very important that every company understands that they are part of a digital interconnected networks, and these partners, vendors, and other third-party organizations will sooner or later connect to your systems. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to employ these network security measures. A lot of times it's believed that, oh, well, my network is air-gapped. Like we saw in the Stuxnet case, there's not truly air-gapped networks because these systems will need upgrades, will need log files, firmware upgrades, and connectivity to other systems. So as the technology is evolving, we'll see these air-gapped networks not really being isolated. So it's very important to have your vendor risk assessment program in place and comply with the standards that you have to comply to protect your critical infrastructure or the infrastructure for your business. Many companies don't know how to initiate these programs, right? And managing third-party risk and protect the value of the organization could be challenging. So I'm here to walk you through the process of developing your third-party risk management. In my experience, I know that this could be challenging. Managing vendor, there's companies that have hundreds or even thousands of different vendors, and they interconnect to the systems, right? So the first thing I would recommend is getting some tools to help you move from manual processes to automated processes. Then that way you can expand the number of vendors that you can assess, and you can align with enterprise vendor management programs. So some of the tools include like the possibility of group these vendors in different tiers, right? And also assign different criticalities to them. It is not the same a vendor that connects to your database than a vendor that sends you maybe graphic content, right? So it's very important to assign how critical your vendors are and differentiate them and group them in accordingly. Then with some of these tools, what you can do is you can assign risk criticality. You can assess the vendors probably by sending a questionnaire to them or following other processes. And you can analyze how risky each one of your vendors are, right? Then you can manage these assessments on a yearly basis or semi-yearly basis. And that way you continuously analyze. One of the big problems in the industry is that some people analyze as a vendor or assess as a vendor. A few years ago, they think everything is good, but things change every day. So that vendor that was in very good shape 5 years ago could be at risk today. As you can see in this slide, you can get all the information with these tools on where the risk is for each one of the vendors. It can tell you if the vendor could be breached because they haven't patched their systems, or they have they have a weak antivirus program or no antivirus at all. Their firewalls are probably haven't been patched in the last year or so. So this assessment is going to help you, and these tools are going to help you overlooking at your vendors and finding which one is vulnerable. Some of the other tools can provide scoring system to your vendors, something similar to the credit score system, and it's going to tell you how critical or how risky your vendor is. So you can combine these two different tools, the system assessment and the score or cybersecurity score, and then the combination of those results will give you the risk levels for each one of your vendors. You can also monitor where your vendors are located geographically, and that's going to help you in deciding what to do when you read news about things happening in other countries. So the TPRM program, doesn't matter if you're a small or medium, large company. A lot of companies are in the initial stages of designing and launching this program. Some others already have a mature program in place, but like I said, it's a cycle, and you have to review it all the time and make improvements to it. There's a lot of room for continuous improvement. A lot of organizations need this continuous visibility of all the third parties, and we also need to report to executive management, right? So by running a comprehensive and consistent third-party risk management program, the organizations can identify potential third-party vulnerabilities and fairly compare different organizations. Some of the recommendations I have for you is try to get continuously updated ratings, constant communication with vendors, test the environments, detect and connect any shortcomings, and if you have to, don't be afraid to replace vendors if they don't comply with your cybersecurity standards. You don't want to risk your company being breached by a hacker because of your vendor connectivity to your vendor. Some of the goals we have is continuously monitoring vendor performance, enforcing third-party risk policies, improving vendor coverage and monitoring capabilities. We also have increase in organizational management awareness and visibility, increasing accountability throughout a comprehensive program. We also have, we reduce compliance cost both internally and externally by streamlining these compliance activities, lowering the cost per vendor assessment, and streamlining reporting and audit support. The end goal is to prevent the next Stuxnet or the next attack to your network. So the action plan is initially you have to, immediately after this presentation, you have to identify who your critical assets in your organizations are and your critical vendors, people who have access to your, like I said before, like to your databases, to your critical systems. Identify these vendors and group them in different tiers and establish security controls that are aligned with third-party risk management. In the first month, 3 months after this presentation, you should be able to select the tools that best suit your needs. You should choose how to assess these different vendors by either by sending a questionnaire or doing something else. Develop a schedule to run the assessments and send the assessments to your vendors. Within 6 months, you should be able to communicate with vendors regarding their weak security controls in place. And like I said before, be ready to replace a vendor if they don't comply with your cybersecurity standards. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.